we are already in the third Zoom meeting, and we see in Canvas that a lot of people are already writing messages and etc. So we are very curious how you are doing. Also, we'd like to hear that today. So I'm looking forward to today. The meeting, what we are going to do is, people have created already some open badges, and we will go and have a look at those and give some feedback to each other. So learn from each other, experience how the badges are working out for you. So there is time to ask some questions about how to create badges, etc. We also will look at looking at assessments and badge dependency options before and after the break, and look at the badge, the earner journey for our badges. So that is about what we are going to do today during the meeting. Getting some questions. For example, can we connect with somebody else within this course? And what we would like to do, you asked to do, not everybody has done that yet, is to create your profile. And you can create your profile in Canvas in your account, click to profile, and then you enter your own description. You can add a picture, you can create some contact details, write a little bit about biography, and add some links. And also here you can edit your profile, picture, name, title, etc. Save your profile. And for example, Naslikan did also create, and if you want to search for other people, then you go in Canvas to courses, go to people, and you see a list of people and can search for each other and connect with each other. Yeah, we also would like to invite you to look at the discussions. We can see that people are looking at, because you are also writing, but it's also nice to reply on people. So if you have some information for others, if you know existing examples of what people are writing, want to create some connections here, that is possible too.
So here are the options. How many badges did you create in the last days? 0, 1 or 2, 3 or 4, and more than 4, just for us to understand where are you at the moment. So we have 13 out of the ones who are here who have yet 0 badges, and we have 9 people who created 1 or 2 badges by now.
So what we are going to talk about in the breakout rooms is we briefly explain, who have created badges, briefly explain what these badges are about. So each person who created badges can show them. So be ready to show your badges and share your screen.
And the idea is to share. If somebody created badges, that's fine. If you didn't, share some questions, challenges, issues, and we'll try to also make note of that. So we're trying to collect your questions, but also answer them on the spot.
And I would like to continue with one of the exciting topics around open badges and education, which is assessment. Let me talk through using badges with very interesting concept of 21st century assessment. Assessment is part of learning very often, whether it's implicit or explicit. Assessment is linked to learning. So we need to know somehow that we are progressing with skills, knowledge, change in attitudes. We may get this confirmation from ourselves, from others we learn with, maybe someone who is organizing learning, perhaps external experts. So what I would like to talk through today is about how this assessment can be implemented with badges. I will use a lot of inspiring material from this publication, What Counts as Learning. And it talks a lot about what open digital badges brings as an opportunity to learning education. It has a lot of inspiring ideas. It has also thought-provoking paragraphs. So I really encourage you to go through this publication. What is interesting when looking at badges, but actually they are built on different infrastructure than we used to have it in 21st century education. So basically, badges enable different ways of showing learning, also implementing assessment. Cheryl Grant says that actually, quoting Seal Brown, that this is a new culture of learning. So basically, due to technological transformations, now in 21st century, we can implement very different ways of assessment and learning opportunities. So what's so different in a way when we talk about assessment and open badges? So something what is important to understand that if we talk about badges, especially badges which are meant to reveal learning, we cannot avoid talk about assessment. At some point, there will be a moment that someone will look into a badge and evidence submitted and will take a decision whether this is real, right, accurate, and so on. And this can be done in different ways. It can be done that a learner does this, a mentor, a peer. So badges allow assessment to be implemented in diverse ways. So talking about assessment will be part of badge system design. Something more about assessment. Actually, badges enable, being a technology, a new technology used in learning and education, it allows to rethink how assessment is carried out. Badges can have much more diverse ways of showing that I learned something or showing that I achieved something. In very traditional ways, we would be asked to prove our learning in a way by taking a test or taking an exam, which is also changing in nowadays education system. So badges can actually widen up opportunities to include claims for specific learning achieved. And using different types of media, for example, someone can easily include a photo of the final result, can include a file, can maybe record an audio reflection and submit as part of the badge evidence. Someone can just post a reflection in text. So there are a lot of different ways of assessing learning. What is important to understand that to some extent, the way the assessment is carried on, certain skills might be revealed easier or more difficult. So very often we say, oh, in 21st century, people need to know how to collaborate in teams. So question, how can we assess the level of skills person has to collaborate in teams? Would you think a multi-answer test would allow me to reveal my skills fully as a good team worker? Perhaps not entirely. Maybe it will show my knowledge, maybe it will show my understanding, maybe it will show description of how I would solve certain things in a team, but not necessarily how I actually work in a team. So that's important to understand, that assessment really depends and shows what a person can learn. Now badges changes a little bit of the game. In what way it changes? If you invite learners to go for a badge, they get more freedom to submit evidence which suits their views on a specific learning they want to showcase. So the badges being open enough, flexible enough, allows learners to reveal more of their skills and experiences, and also have a choice what they want to submit in a way. One other thing is that through assessment systems, we actually often somehow enable learners or limit learners to create their identities and influence their dispositions for learning. So very often, by the way people are assessed or the way they experience assessment might actually form their learner identity. So what we take or not take from this learning, or what do we think about our skill, if we achieved it or not? Because very often in traditional ways, someone else tells what kind of knowledge you received, if it corresponds to the standard. If you have a skill, someone may say, oh, maybe it's not enough, or maybe it's good enough. And we form this kind of worldviews that only others can actually judge about us in terms of our competency, in terms of our knowledge, and so on. And it's very difficult to overcome this imprinted way of seeing the world. Then on the organizational level, badge system provide opportunities for organizations to design specific assessment systems, which maybe would not work very well in any other traditional institutions. So if you deliver learning and you think for that particular learning, assessment should be not necessarily a test or exam, you're much more free to implement a different way of issuing badge, which allows maybe more qualitative assessment rather than quantitative assessment of learning. So continuing, Open Badges promises that more detailed skills and even qualities can be revealed of a person. So it shows more than just grades. It shows possible qualities, character traits, more soft skills. So badges can really show different ways, different things. Then it comes to types of assessment with open badges, and that goes also a little bit to technical opportunities on the platforms. So badges can have evidence which requires self-approvement. So I submit some evidence and it's automatically approved because it's all about what I think about my learning. And to many extent, that's my property in a way. Badges can be also issued through peer review. It can be also involving organizers, mentors, educators looking into evidence and verifying it or asking for changes. It also can be that evidence to a badge is submitted and some external body or expert is looking through the evidence submitted and approves or asks for improvement of that evidence. I put an extra asterisk to external because we are still experimenting with this way of implementing. So let me show a few examples on the platform, how different types of assessment can be implemented. Yes. Last year in January, we had still privilege and opportunity to go to South Africa for a study visit on digital literacies. Partner organizations met in Port Elizabeth, and we had quite an exciting program to learn about what we do with digital literacies and also what other organizations are doing. So we had one of the visits to Nelson Mandela Bay. And during that visit, we could actually learn about this hub, how it supports young people willing to go on entrepreneurship with digital technologies and how they mentor them. And here's an example of a badge which had two tasks. One was requiring to submit some evidence from a visit. So you could choose whatever you want to submit in terms of showcasing learning. So for me, I put few pictures where I'm in front of gathered people explaining about what we do. And also I had described what I learned. And another task was more for myself, where I was asked to make a note of what do I take as my learning for my organization. So I just submitted evidence and received a badge for being involved in this activity. Another example, let's say this is a badge from a conference on digital youth work. And now I will maybe show a little bit how it looks in backstage. So if I want to configure the way the badge is issued, I would need to navigate to the place which is called badge requires evidence. So I decide first, will this badge require evidence or not? Yes, no. And if it requires, I describe what kind of task person needs to undertake and what kind of evidence need to be submitted in order for the evidence to be ready for review. And in this example, both tasks will be reviewed by activity members. So it's peer review. Where are more options. It can be badge earner, activity members, activity organizers. There's also possibility if your organization uses smaller teams, can be team members and team leaders. So in this badge, in this example, badge will be actually reviewed and verified by activity members because it was a conference of peers. So it doesn't make sense to only organizers be involved in reviewing that evidence. So this is an example of how different types of assessment can be implemented within the badge system. And one other thing what I would like to continue with is explaining actually other badges can be used in the process of assessment. So these ones were mainly how a single badge can be configured to be issued. But then we also can talk about badge pathways, and badges can actually be used as a stepping stone. So you need to accomplish specific badge to continue to another badge. It can be also organized into collections. So you need to collect 3 types of badges to get a top level badge. Or it can be another combination where it is maybe combined. First you do few steps with few badges, and then you have a choice to go with several more badges as collection. And on a platform, actually, we can configure different variations of pathways. So you can, for example, in an activity, ask for specific number of any badges to be received to earn a big badge. So for example, the final conference badge can be earned by having 8 other badges collected. You can also think of having specific number of badges required from another number of badges. Yeah. So for example, from 10 badges, you need to collect 8, and these specific badges will be collected. You may also want to require specific badges to be collected. So 5 specific badges to move on. And one other extra thing we are experimenting right now is to use a badge as a criteria for several activities. So that's something new which we also want to introduce, that, for example, you use one badge across different activities, and these unlocks a lot of opportunities. So how does it look on a platform? So that's again back to this conference badge. So this was the badge which was more motivational badge. If you collected 6 other badges, you could receive that badge. A more complex system could look like this. So this is a badge system of one network where the young people, I was working with them recently on digital youth work skills, and the network promotes active young people's role in societies. So these young people do activities with other young people, and nowadays it's a lot about online, where are different sequence badges. So you initiate something, and there are several levels to complete. So you start from first level, then you go to second level and third level. So these levels will unlock only if you complete the first level, and the top level badge you will get if you collected 3 badges. And then it goes to main badge, which requires a lot more. You can see also that this badge will require all colorful badges to be collected, plus 3 level badges. And these levels are also defined in a similar way, that this badge, you need to get 5 more badges. And this one requires 22 badges out of all the system in order to get it. So this is example how a badge can be configured, badge system. And to edit this, again, you would go on a badge where you want to have requirements of other badges. It's a special section. And then you decide whether it requires any other badges. And then you can select badges from existing system. You pre-select them. And then if you add them, you can set the requirements. So that's how it works with badge pathways. And why we talk about badge pathways? Because actually that's where learners can locate themselves much better when they need to set the next goal for learning, or maybe to understand what kind of activities they already completed. So badge overview can help learners to better and easier navigate learning. So that would be maybe the main answer why to use badge systems in learning. And before break, I want to share 2 questions which we will continue after the break. And it will be mainly for you to think of how do you want to implement assessment and why, and how can you use badge dependency options to create badge pathways.
So we are at the module 4, badge system design, and there we already share a few tips how to start using badges in your organization. And then in the session 4.2, we're inviting you to learn about a couple of approaches on design thinking, and especially how to design or how to imagine who are your learners, what is the journey you want them to take, what are the questions and challenges maybe that learners face, and where do they want to appear by the end of the program. Also putting your thinking in it. Where do you as educators want your participants to be? Inviting you to look through these couple of videos, and then in the next sessions we are giving a bit of example how could you approach that and how can you visualize your learners for your own programs. So here we have connected Tony, something that came out from the empathy mapping when we tried to put some criteria: who is that young person, the age, access to technology, what person loves to do in life, and so on. And then inviting you to actually think, if connected Tony just arrives to your volunteering program, where do you want to see Tony at the end of it? So we said, oh, we want to be that Tony is now just like excited about life and likes skateboarding, but at the end of the program, Tony wants to also maybe be, or we want them to see that it's a bit of volunteering ambassador. And then we go through the journey. What is planned in that journey? What are the activities there in our program? So we can name them and draw that journey. Maybe it's one pathway, maybe there are a few pathways how people get there. And then here I can zoom a little bit. Once you have the key milestones, you can go to every step and identify what people need to do on that step and who is involved there. So for example, if we say that a person starts with signing up for the camp, there is a coordinator involved there, and maybe there is some kind of online form to fill in. Later on, this is helpful when you think, do you want to issue badge for signing up, or for becoming a volunteer, or for confirming a volunteering status? For example, there is first meeting. So if you identify that there is face-to-face meeting, there is also mentor involved, and people need to get to know each other and people need to share responsibilities, very well. Do you think there can be a badge recognizing that person took a responsibility, participated in getting to know each other, or participated in face-to-face meeting? And if you know that information, that also gives ideas what a badge can be for. And in terms of assessment, is there some person who can confirm that Tony was present at that meeting, or that Tony took some responsibilities? Is it assessed by peer learners? Is it assessed by the program leader, mentor, and so on? So having these details in that journey helps later on to actually identify where badges can support person in that journey. So maybe the first thing is to recognize the effort. Maybe then another thing is to recognize participation and being active in sharing responsibilities, or for getting to know each other, being kind of courageous enough to make that step into the new group. Then people have specific activities. Perhaps you want to recognize participation in activities by providing some badges for each activity, and people can choose which activity they want to attend. So it really depends what your program is. But this pathway can help you to identify where and how can you support young person's learning with badges. How can you help them on the journey, and how can you recognize what people learn, especially towards the end of the meeting when people talk about what did they learn, what are the future actions and so on, then maybe you can give more badges or provide more badges for people to claim for the things they learned. This is the approach we're inviting you to try out before you actually go and start building a lot of badges. Yeah? So once you have that clarity, you can go to the next steps. And there we put these steps in a summary, and then we gave you a template file of badge system description. So that template gives you ideas what you need to describe in each badge, and you have everything in front of you very clearly. What badges do you have? And then how these badges are linked to each other, and what kind of type of badges you want to issue. And this can help you to identify that kind of pathway for a person and what badges are there, like signs when you're traveling down the road, which show you some direction, what's going on. So there I added also an image of, for example, badges I used in the event of lasting 2 days, where it starts with some arrival badges, then some badges for taking part in some small learning islands. Then there are badges for attending some inspirational speeches and spaces. Then there are badges for the workshops that people attend, and they may not attend everything. They might attend only one thing, but they get recognition at every step where they learn something. And you can have always special badges or fun badges or badges linked to anything you think needs to be recognized, assessed, or people need to be somehow supported. So there we shared already some digital tools for you so that you can access Badgecraft. We also added a link to the playlist. Those people who are still a bit struggling or maybe don't know where to start, we added videos that are recorded from the platform so you can follow that one. And in terms of badge image design, we showed you already some tools there. And inviting you to be brave and share your first badges, or if you already have few badges described, you can share that badge system description template filled in, and you can post here in the forum. So when you post it, and we invite you to post not just an image, but also a description, because the data is what matters behind, not that much the image itself. So if you add a description, like for example, Amer added here, we are able to feedback to you. We can react, we can give suggestions, we can share some tips with you. So that's what I wanted to share about designing badges and linking them. Nerijus already mentioned that you can link badges to each other, you can create pathways or kind of tree of badges. So the tools are there, guidelines are there. Let us know how this is going on, because that's a good way to really experiment in a safe way and get support from others. So let us know how this is going on, and we invite you not to postpone it to unknown future. Really take the step, try it out, and see how it goes. And then you can see if it's something that you want to continue or not.